Hey there, and welcome to my channel. This is Elizabeth with Ellie's Handcrafted Jewelry, and today I'm going to share how to create this simple woven Celtic ring. It only takes 2 base wires, some weaving wire, and the basic tools you need every day to make jewelry. So this is a great beginner-friendly project if you're new to wire weaving. So let's get started. Now for materials, you'll need a ruler, flush cutters, round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, 2 6-inch segments of 22 or 20 gauge wire, and 28 gauge wire for weaving. And you'll also need a ring mandrel so that way we can sculpt the wire once we've woven it all together. Now before we get started with the actual weaving, we're going to go ahead and measure the distance that we need to weave in order to create the right size for the ring. I'm creating a size 6, so I measured around that and then I trimmed that wire, so that gives me a bit of a guide for when I'm weaving. Now to start the weave, we're going to go ahead and take our 2 segments of 22 or 20 gauge wire, and I'm putting mine in a spring clamp, but you can also use painter's tape or a ring clamp if you happen to have one of those, just to give you a little extra hand. And I'll begin the weave by wrapping the 28 gauge wire around the bottom base wire, and I'm going to wrap it around a total of 3 times. And once I've wrapped it around 3 times, I will then wrap the weaving wire around both base wires 2 times. Now once I've woven around both wires twice, I'll go ahead and wrap around that bottom base wire 3 more times. After wrapping around that bottom base wire again, we're going to go ahead and wrap around both base wires 2 times. But before I do that, I'll scrunch that down a little bit with my pliers. Just be careful not to mar the wire. And then wrapping around both base wires 2 times. And what we're doing right now is called the Lashing Weave. And this is the basic pattern that we're going to do. And we're going to continue this pattern until we reach about 3.5 inches. Now I did want to mention too that when you're working with 22 gauge wire, it is a lot more malleable and easier to bend, kind of like what happens here. So the best thing you can do is just kind of direct the wire and then kind of push it down a little bit without adding tension, and then once you get the wire where you need it, then you can add the tension. Now at this point, once we've reached 3.5 inches, I'm going to go ahead and begin bending it in half, making sure that the woven wire is still flat, and making sure that those 2 ends there meet up. And we're just going to go ahead and continue bending it until we have a bit of a teardrop shape at the end of the woven wire. Once we have that little loop at the end there, we're going to go ahead and begin curving either wire, and it's going to almost look a little bit like a helix shape as you're bending the wires over top each other, and just doing it on both sides, overlapping the wires. Now we're going to do the same with the opposite side, and just bending that one over the top and then the one on the bottom underneath the other side. It should be consistent like this to where it's almost like you're twisting the wire, but it has a open spot as you're twisting it over the top. Once we've curved the wire over the tops like so, we're going to go ahead and bend these out straight, making sure that they are parallel with one another, so there should be 4 wires total, and begin wrapping the weaving wire around the bottom base wire 1 time, and then around the next 2 base wires, so the first and second base wire, coming behind in between those 2 wires like so, and then wrapping around the 2 middle base wires, and then coming up in between those 2 base wires from the back, and then to wrap around the 2 upper base wires, and then around the top base wire 1 time. Now once we've completed that pattern, we'll begin wrapping around the bottom base wire 1 time, and then wrap around the 2 bottom base wires 1 time, bringing it in between those 2 base wires, then wrapping around the 2 middle base wires, coming then in between those 2 base wires, being careful to add tension at the end rather than all the way through, and then wrapping around those 2 top base wires, and then we're going to wrap around the top base wire 1 time. And we're just going to go ahead and continue this pattern until we reach a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch past our cut wire that we use for measurement. Now I'm taking the wire that I cut earlier to measure against, and it should be about 1/4 of an inch taller than that piece of wire, just so that we have extra room. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and wrap my weaving wire around the bottom base wire 3 times to complete the weave. Now once I've completed the weave, I'm just going to use the pull and twist method. You can also use your flush cutters, but I find that this leaves a nice clean cut. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and trim off some excess with my flush cutters, leaving about 1/2 inch just so I have plenty to work with. From there, I'm going to go ahead and begin sculpting my woven wire around the mandrel, like so. And just guiding the wire all the way around. From there, I'm taking my chain nose pliers. You can also use round nose pliers to kind of round that bottom part of the base wires there and begin bringing them through that loop where we started at the beginning of the weave. And we're just going to bend it in. And once I've rounded it in where I want it, I'm going to take the flush cutters and cut off the excess, and then I'm going to go ahead and close them off with my chain nose pliers so that they're flush against the back. And then I'm going to feed it over the ring mandrel again and just kind of help smooth out all the edges, make sure that it's nice and round. At this point, you can also use a nylon hammer if you have it and hammer it a little bit just to give it extra strength. But the amount woven together, it should be fairly strong on its own. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and open up some of those twisted parts again with my chain nose pliers very lightly. You can use your round nose pliers too, but this is just kind of helping me open those up a little bit more. And there you have it, your very own Celtic wire woven ring. And thanks so much for being here, and I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you'd like to see some more tutorials like this one, you can head on over to my channel. I have some more beginner-friendly tutorials available, and I'm adding new content every week. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to stay up to date on the latest videos. Also, I do have some written tutorials available on my website, so just click the link in the description to check them all out. And I hope that you all have a great one, and I look forward to hearing from all of you in the comment section.